So this is going to be amber 8, amber 9?
9.
Amber
9.
And anything we should be talking about before we...
I just wanted to mention, so once the beep went off while I was writing down stuff for beep 5, so I omitted that.
Good.
One. And then what would have been beep 4 went off while we were doing some kind of like sensitive information stuff. So I skipped that one and then I just took another one.
Okay.
Because yeah.
And by sensitive information, you mean things that are none of my business, basically? No.
Yeah. Things I just can't share. But I took another beep so that we could still have 6.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay.
The object of DES is not to pry into things that we have no right to pry into. Yeah. And so you have the right to talk about that. I am interested in those kinds of situations, whether the beep that we're going to skip is we're skipping because of problematics of the method. So it has nothing to do with the method. It has to do with the content. It's none of my business. I'm totally happy to skip that. But
yeah. It was more just what was going on at the time. Yeah.
Okay. Fair enough.
It wasn't anything to do with the method. Yeah.
So Amber, you collected the beeper went off 7 times while you were wearing it. Is that correct?
It went off 8 times.
8 times. Okay.
Yes. But I still collected 6 beeps that I can write down and I can bring here and we can talk about.
8 times, skip 1 because it's none of our business and 1 because it went off while she was writing down the previous beep.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
And we've just found that about that last, we've just found that it's complicated enough to try to get down what's an experience about 1 beep, let alone when you got 1 beep that's about another beep. Then you got
yeah. I even actually kind of wrote it down, but I was like, I better just skip it because I just was like, I just wrote it down maybe for my records rather than.
It's pretty complicated.
Yeah.
We have some critics who think that we ought to do that kind of thing all the time, that we should beat people while they're engaged in the sampling process and look at the sampling process. I think that's more difficult than
it sounds, yeah.
Sounds, yeah.
There's a reason that there are monks out there who spend many decades of their life trying to learn to be present in the moment, right?
Right.
Mm.
Not that that's entirely the same as, what we do here, but,
Right.
Okay, then I think I'm ready to move on to number 1.
Yep, so am I.
Okay, so beep 1, I was eating like a sushi roll, and it was like kind of a long hand roll, and for whatever reason, like I was nearing the end of it, and I guess I had bitten to it a certain way that like the contents of it, so you have like the nori, and you have the rice, and you have like the stuff inside, it was like pushed out the other end, like the opposite end, almost like when you eat a hamburger and it starts to fall out. And at the moment of the beep, I was seeing the contents outside of this boundary, like I guess the boundary of the rice. And I was just seeing that. I was really like focused on just that aspect of my visual field. I said I was seeing it as it is. I didn't really have any distinct quality. I remember it being kind of a funny color just because it was 2 things kind of mixed together. But other than that, that was it. But I was really focusing on the contents of it, not really the rest.
So it had a funny color, but the color I'm gathering was not the most important thing or not even an important thing. It was just one of the features.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. And I got distracted or missed the garbled or something. So what are you eating?
A California roll. It's like a hand roll, like a sushi roll.
Okay. And your gaze is aimed at the end of the California roll.
Yeah, so if it's like, the roll obviously has 2 ends, right? There was one end I was eating, and the other side was like the flat, clean end, right? I had turned it over, and I was looking at the clean end with the contents kind of like poking out of it, almost like past the rice boundary is what I would call it.
And the rice boundary is the boundary that's maintained by the end of the California roll, is that?
Yeah, like the contents are, it's like it goes seaweed, then it goes rice, then the middle is like the meat and the avocado. And then yeah, it was just
Okay.
for whatever reason it was just pushed like past it. Like,
So the rice had pushed past the seaweed.
well, the contents had pushed past the rice. Kind of a hard
So
thing.
I'm not.
Let me try and Amber for when you is this I'm seeing stuff pushed past some other stuff, or is it I'm seeing the middle of the California roll past the rice?
The latter. Like, yeah, I'm seeing the stuff past the rice. Like, because before this moment, I was like, oh, I feel like it's gonna fall out, and I like turned it over to look at it, and I was looking at the stuff kind of like poking out.
But it's not that I'm just seeing like forms, right? Is what I take you to be saying. I'm like accurately seeing the again, if we broke it down, the avocado and stuff, that's not all part of it though, right?
No.
This is just, but I'm seeing the filling of the California roll
Yes.
kind of pushed out of the roll.
Yeah, like kind of like about to fall out, but it's not falling out, but it like could, I guess.
And you said boundary before. Is there something about like that this is a boundary that's part of the seeing?
No, I wouldn't say that. I think that's just how I would describe the structure that was going on. Like, it being the way it was is not how it should be. Does that make sense? Like, because that's why I was drawn to the contents because of its state, not necessarily because it was outside of a boundary, but it's like its state was beyond a boundary.
Okay.
So the way it's supposed to be is seaweed, rice,
Then
and
like the
then
meat and
what's inside it.
yeah.
And the problem is that the meat has pushed out past the rice portion.
Yeah.
And
It's like in the middle of rice, and it's kind of like come out like that.
Okay. And you're examining that.
Yeah, and I'm really focused on just that portion compared to everything else in my visual field.
Okay. And I'm gathering that the motivation for this interest is possibly the center stuff is going to fall out.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not thinking that.
No, not at this moment.
Okay.
And I take it that, or one thing I want to ask Amber is like the fact that it's not supposed to be there, it's not supposed to be pushed out. Is that part of the seeing, or is that context as well?
That's context.
Okay.
So I'm looking at it the way it is. And I'm
Yes.
zeroed in on this piece of it.
Yeah, and I'm zeroed in on like the stuff kind of coming out.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Good.
I'm good for that beat.
Two.
All right. Beat number 2, Amber.
Okay, so beep 2, I was picking an olive off of a pizza. And at the moment of the beep, I could physically feel the olive between my 2 fingers, like the edge of it, because it was like not flat. It was like, you know, when you put on a pizza, it kind of gets a little flat. I could feel the edge of the olive in between my fingers, and that was it. I could just feel it. I wasn't looking at it. That wasn't present. It was just my feeling of it between my fingers, like physically.
And when you say the edge, are you talking about like at the moment of the beep, I'm picking it off the pizza? I've already picked it off, and so I just am holding the olive.
Oh, I see. Oh, no, I was like in the process of like pulling it off. So it's still attached.
Okay.
And I was like pulling it, and I could feel, I was like gripping it, but it wasn't off yet.
And is this an experience, I'm feeling the round edges of an olive, or is this I'm just kind of feeling round?
I'm feeling an edge. Like there's something about the edge. It was like a distinct edge to it. Yeah.
And I see you doing, it was like your thumb and your
Yes, it was like this.
pointer finger?
Yes.
Dr. Robert, do you have any questions you want to ask about that?
And is this about the olive? I feel the edges of an olive. I happen to be feeling it with my thumb and finger, but I'm not really feeling my thumb and finger. What I'm focusing on is the olive. Is that right? As opposed to I feel this pressure on my thumb and finger that's caused by an olive.
Oh, I see. Okay. The olive wasn't really in my experience. The idea of olive was not. But the edge, like just the feeling of the edge was. I don't know if that helped. But
So,
it was
so it's the edge of this thing, which happens to be an olive, but the edge, what I'm feeling is edginess.
yes.
I'm not feeling pressure on my fingers, on my thumb. I'm feeling edge of this olive.
Yes. Yes. It's like, yeah, edge.
Okay. Obviously, it's my fingers and thumb which are transducing the pressure and conveying that this is an edge of something.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as my experience is concerned, it's of the thing, not of my fingers and thumb.
Yes. It's this edge.
I feel this edge.
Yeah, because the olive, the idea of olive was not there.
Okay.
And I wasn't seeing it either, which is kind of crazy. Yeah.
Okay. Anything else in your experience, Amber, at the moment?
Nope.
Then I think I'm good.
Me too. Number 3.
Okay. Okay, so number 3, I had just said the word niece. And that was still kind of like, it was at the end of the word niece. Like, that was it.
What's the word? I can't hear the word.
Niece. Niece.
Niece, like a nephew and niece?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
And I was talking to my dad, and my eyes were aimed at him, and I was seeing him. But I was also eating ramen. And I was like picking it up with chopsticks. And it was just coming into this is all at the moment of the beat. Sorry, I didn't make that clear. But this is all, this was just coming into my vision. I guess I had just lifted it high enough that it was just coming into my vision. And it was like the ramen noodles were at the bottom right field of my vision. They were like coming into this image of my dad. And the noodles were starting to come in, and it only was in the bottom right. And that was it. That was the entire moment of the beep right there.
So I'm not sure that I understand the niece portion of this. So okay. Are there 2 aspects of my experience? There's the visual thing and the saying of niece?
Yes. Like, I had just finished saying niece, and it was kind of, that was ending, and then the noodles and all that stuff was beginning.
So niece is still present to you,
mm-hmm.
even though in the physical world, the utterance of it is done like half a second or a quarter of a second or a second or something before?
Yeah.
Okay. And you had said that.
Mm-hmm.
And yet it's still somehow present in your experience.
Yeah. It was the idea of niece, because I was describing, this is context, but I was describing, we were watching The Office, and he wanted to know why they named Jim and Pam have a daughter, and they named the daughter Cece, and he wanted to know why. And I was saying because it was named after Jenna Fisher's niece. And then, so the idea of niece, that was the main idea of the whole thing. So that was still the idea of niece, and the idea of the word niece was still there. Like, and then, that was the saying part.
And is it the word niece that's there, or is it the sentence, they named it because it's Jennifer's niece?
No, it was the word niece. It wasn't the rest of the sentence. It wasn't about Jenna Fisher. It wasn't about Cece. It wasn't about the characters. It was about niece.
So like your experience at this moment is of one word.
Yes.
That word niece.
Yes.
Not the word at the end of the sentence. It happened to be the word at the sentence, but your experience is not of the end of a sentence. It is of niece.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And that is as a word, not, I'm gathering, that is a word.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Not the concept of niece as being, my sister's daughter or whatever.
Yeah. Or not even the fact that it was the name. That's how the name was related. Nothing like that. It was just the word niece.
The word niece.
Yeah.
As a I don't want to say meaningless, but is it like a meaningless, like this is a word niece but the semantics of it, the meaning of it, the context of it is not present to me anymore, just the word?
Yeah. Yeah. It's like the definition, the meaning, all of that stuff. It was just niece. It was like an objective niece, I guess.
Okay. Like an abstracted away word. This is
Yes.
the word niece is present, but all of the semantic hooks or tendrils or connections or whatever are gone.
Yeah.
Okay. And then I'm seeing my father,
Mm-hmm.
and that's in my experience.
Yeah.
And I see ramen come into my visual field.
Yeah, like as part of, like almost as if that was starting to interrupt. I don't know why. I mean, that's more metaphorical than it is really experiential. But it was coming in, like that's how I would describe it, because it wasn't here, it was just starting to kind of come in.
Can I ask a question here?
Sure.
Yeah.
Or Amber, what is it that what do you see?
I see, okay, so I see like, if I had to like paint a picture, I see my dad, right? Like he's sitting there, and then I see like noodles in like the bottom right of my visual experience. Like of my visual, yeah. My visual.
And noodles on chopsticks or just noodles?
Just noodles. But I understand them to be lifted by chopsticks because they're like in the air. If that makes sense.
So what I'm trying to understand here is the noodles are on chopsticks. I understand that.
Yeah.
And do you see the noodles with the chopsticks abstracted away, I guess? So
Yeah. Almost, yeah.
Or is it that the noodles are positioned in a way, right? Because if you have noodles on chopsticks, not saying that's to conform to reality, but it's like, right, like the noodles are on top of the sticks when you're pulling them up.
Oh, I understand. No, realistically, if you were to take a picture,
Right.
chopsticks would have been in it.
So in the real photons coming from the chopstick noodle thing, you're getting photons coming from the chopsticks, but you're not getting experience coming from the chopsticks. You're getting experience coming from the noodles. Is that right?
Yes. And
then I'm interested in this disturbance thing, which is sort of metaphor or semi-metaphor, and I can't even remember whether that was exactly the right word, but I'm gathering that it's not just I see the noodles entering, that there's something about this enter that is not just the appearance of the ramen.
yeah.
Is that right?
There's something about it. It's like disrupting this thing that I am looking at.
And is that disrupting experience? Like I feel a disruption?
What did I write down? No, I didn't. No, I wouldn't. No, I didn't feel a disruption. It was a disruption, but I didn't experience it, I guess, if that makes sense.
So it would be possible, I can imagine, it would be possible I'm seeing my dad, and then for whatever reason, he's been the figure of my visual world.
Right.
And for whatever reason, I'm going to make the ramen the figure of the next figure in my experiential world.
Right.
And so in this perceptual space, you have to sort of destroy the old figure to make a new figure. Right? That's the way figure ground works, we think.
Uh-huh.
But most of the time that doesn't happen. People don't experience that happening. But are you saying I'm sort of experiencing this disruption?
Yeah, but I wouldn't say it like I would say I experienced a disruption, but the idea of disruption wasn't present to me.
Okay, I understand that, I think.
Okay.
But I'm noticing a disruption. It's not just that my gaze is going from my dad to the ramen.
Oh,
It's that I feel a disruption as the ramen. Is that right?
yes. Yeah, because I wasn't turning my head. It was coming in. Like it was like going like that. Like if I'm focused on you, it was coming in like that. Like into the noodles came into my visual world
Right.
rather than me turning my visual world to noodles. Okay.
So I don't want to make too more of this, but I also don't want to make less of it either.
Okay.
So I can have something enter into my visual world, and I don't feel any disruption. I just feel, there's something rising up in my visual space.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Or I could somehow, as if I was seeing my dad, and now suddenly it's in the physical world, it's rising up, but
I see.
I feel a disruption as I move from one perception to the next, I guess.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That latter statement made more sense. That second statement. Yeah. That's more it. That is more it than the first.
So I do feel something of a disruption of perception as I visually acknowledge the appearance of the ramen.
Yeah. For lack of a better description and a lack of a better way to put into semantics, definitely, yes.
Okay. And so I want to make one more time to make sure that I understand it. It's not just that my gaze is shifting from my dad to the ramen. It's that my gaze is disruptively shifting. I feel a disruption as the ramen enters my experience. Is that right?
Yeah, the ramen disrupted my visual experience.
And I felt the disruption as opposed to, I'm zooming in on the ramen.
I don't want to say I felt disruption, but I wouldn't describe it as no disruption. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's...
Well, that's the reason why we do this thing more than once,
right.
So we can try to figure out what we're talking about.
Right.
Let me try to see and take a pass at it. We may not get there with this beep, and that's fine. But Amber, is this I can imagine a couple of ways this might present itself, right? One might be I'm seeing my dad. I'm seeing, right? My eyes are pointed somewhere. And in that process, I see something come into my visual field, right? And in one manner of speaking, it's disrupting, right? It's changing, right? What I'm seeing is changing. And so it's disruptive in that regard. Or I can see it as sort of a fact of the universe. Yeah, my visual field is being disrupted by my ramen coming into my seeing. But all this really is that I'm seeing my dad and I'm seeing the ramen come up into what I'm seeing. So in other words, is the disruption something that's like directly part of what's present to you at the moment? Or is it more just that's a context, it's a description of what's happening, but what I really just see is I see my dad and I see ramen?
Yeah, I guess that makes more sense. Yeah, I guess that's just what I was seeing now that I think about it, because like the feeling of disruption is not there, like the word niece. It's not there like that. Niece is there. That idea is there, not the disruption.
And so my question, I want to just make sure I'm saying this as clearly as I can. Disruption then is more, is that context of like, because obviously, right, like there is something that is disrupting my visual field. Right? This is something that's entering my visual field.
Yeah.
Is it that, or is it that somehow like my like the disruption is something that's present to me in the seeing, however, it's some manner, in some way, disruption is present to me.
I cannot confidently say disruption was present. But I also can't confidently say that it wasn't.
Yeah, and that might be very well where we
Okay.
leave it. Or, I
Okay.
think we're making some pretty fine-grained distinctions here.
Right.
Um,
Right. This one was kind of crazy. There were a lot of things happening.
So let me make a theoretical commentary here, which I don't want us to go look for this theoretical thing, but
Okay.
so when you see the ramen, what we've decided is that I see the ramen and I've abstracted away the chopsticks. So my perception is not, my experience perception is not accurate to what is falling on my retina.
Yes.
I am erasing something that's on my retina experientially, or failing to see or something. I shouldn't say erasing, but
Yeah.
that there's chopsticks and there's ramen, and they're both on my visual field, but I'm not seeing the chopsticks. I'm only seeing the ramen.
Yes.
So there is something that is, you could say, disruptive about that. My visual field is disruptive in the sense that the chopsticks I'm not seeing, the ramen I am seeing.
Mm-hmm.
But what I understood that to be saying about that was, well, I just didn't see the chopsticks. I didn't feel any disruption about the lack of chopstickiness. I just didn't see it. All I saw was ramen, as if that was all that was there.
Right. Yes. The disruption. Whoa. The disruption is more like the ramen was disrupting my dad rather than the chopsticks and the fine tuning parts of the ramen. It was more that it was disrupting me looking at my dad because I was speaking to him.
So that makes it seem like there is some experience. Amber is having some experience of disruption. It's not just my gaze is shifting from my dad to the ramen. It's that I feel something of a disruptive shift. Is that right?
I guess so. Yeah. I just at that moment I didn't pick that out.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, maybe we've worked as hard as we can at this, and we're going to end up being. I'm not sure what happened about this, and
Okay.
maybe we'll figure it out somewhere down the road. Maybe we won't.
Yeah. I would guess that if the disruption was present, it'd be again like in the weeds kind of thing.
Okay.
I did have a question, Amber, about the ramen. Is that in motion? Like I'm lifting it up and I'm seeing that lift, or is this like a snapshot? I see my dad, I see the ramen.
Oh, okay. Okay, so this is kind of interesting. Yes, he is not moving, but the ramen is moving slowly. Like it's like coming up slowly. Yeah.
And is that a reflection of reality that like, is that just I'm seeing the scene accurately? My dad's not moving because he's sitting and watching TV and I'm lifting the chopsticks, or is, my dad's moving, my dad's talking. I don't see any of that motion, but I do see the chopsticks rising.
Okay, the chopsticks were as a fact of the universe rising. My dad, as a fact of the universe, was probably not sitting perfectly still because he was eating something as well. Like he wasn't looking at me. He was looking like straight in front of him at stuff. I don't know what it is. I can't remember. But he was like, he was moving and doing something. But to me, he was still, as if I took a picture of him.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So I see my dad still.
Yes.
Even though he's not in reality still.
Yes. He's making sure, he's making like micro movements. He's not like doing like a big, but he's definitely moving.
And I don't see it.
Yeah, I don't see it.
Okay. You've had other examples like that. Fairly common, I think.
Yeah.
And I see the ramen.
The ramen is moving though. It's like just slowly kind of coming in to the, it's, yeah, like on the corner.
Okay.
Yeah.
And does that motion seem like the right speed and all? Like probably what was actually happening?
I would think so. I would think so, yeah.
So I see my dad, who is actually moving, but I don't see him moving. And I see the ramen coming in, which is actually on a chopstick, but I don't see the chopstick. So I have actually perceptually distorted, if you would want to use that word, or creatively seen
Yeah.
both aspects of this scene.
Mm-hmm.
Reminds me a bit of the text files, I think, from last time, right? Like the highlighting of the files, the blue bars, but I'm just not picking up the words. They're even
Yes,
though they're
or like
text.
or when I've snapshotted the TV. I know I've had a few of those where I'm watching the TV and people are moving, but
Right.
yeah.
But they're not moving in your perception for whatever.
Yeah, I've frozen it. Yeah.
Which is interesting.
Sorry, maybe this will clarify some of the issues here that we had in here. Are either of these things, Amber, like the niece and the seeing, are either one more present to you? 50-50, 90-10.
Yeah, I want to say the seeing was more present simply because niece was on the tail end again. We were kind of ending that, and then the visual was starting. But I'm trying to think, maybe 70-30.
Okay.
Yeah. So the seeing was 70, if I didn't make that clear.
Okay. Number 4.
Okay, so number 4, I was walking over to unplug my iPad from the charger, and at the moment of the beep, I was seeing the pink case against, like, the white wall it was leaning against. So that's what I was seeing at the moment of the beep. However, I wanted to note that actually the iPad was not leaning completely against the white wall. The wall has like a border to it. It's like this wooden border. So it was leaning halfway into the wall and the border, and then the other half, it wasn't touching anything. But in my visual experience, it was against just the white. And then, I just wanted to note that because I realized all of that later. I was like, whoa, because I wrote down, it was into white, blah, blah, blah. I went to sit down and write that. Then I stood back up to go and get it, and I was like, oh, that's not even close to what's going on here. So, yeah.
So at the moment of the beep, is it that I'm seeing my pink iPad leaning against the white wall, or the iPad leaning against white?
Okay. I see pink rectangle leaning against a pink rectangle with these black circles in the corners like this. Because it looks like, actually I have it right here. It looks like, see how it has these black, it was like this, but they were on all 4 of them because it wasn't this tablet. And then it was like straight. It was actually leaning slightly, but in my experience, it was straight against like this kind of off-white color.
So it's not really even that I'm seeing, it's not as discrete as I'm seeing my iPad against the wall. I see this like pink, what is a accurate reflection of the case, right? The pink rectangle with the black dots against an off-white, leaning against an off-white.
Yeah, it's like against it, but it's straight. It's not angled. It's like, it's like it's like a rectangle I understand to be my iPad, but really it's just the rectangle pinkness. Well, yeah, that color, that rose gold pinkness color with the black dots as compared to my iPad as leaning against the wall, this wall with, all of that other stuff.
And that's something I take you to be seeing, like I'm seeing, it's not that I'm imagining this right in my imagination, and maybe it is. That's where I wanted to ask, is this like a real life, I'm seeing this thing, or am I innerly seeing this scene that I've created?
Yes. So my eyes are pointed at it. I'm looking at it, but I've totally changed the image. I've totally changed the image. That thing does not have 4 black dots on it. It was not straight. It was not completely against the white wall. I have totally So I don't know if if you would consider that imagined or what, because a lot of it was imagined. Like I was filling in things to make it, I guess, more perfect.
But this feels sort of like it's not like I'm, right, like I can, in my imagination, I can imagine what the psychology building at UNLV looks like or something like that, right? This is not that. I'm not looking at, it's like I'm looking and I'm,
yes,
right.
I'm looking at it and I'm
but seeing something that's not, what I'm seeing isn't accurate per se from what the real life things would be.
So let me make sure I understand. I see my iPad leaning against the wall, but what I see is not an accurate representation of what is actually there.
Yes.
But the experiences of seeing the iPad against the wall. Is that right?
Yes.
What's the wall?
iPad, but the real iPad only has 2 feet instead of 4, and it's really not straight, but I see it straight.
Yeah, it wasn't even really against a fully white wall, actually, either. Can I say that I see it like a pink rectangle that I understand to be my iPad, if like to be really specific? Can I say that, or is that the same thing?
Well, it depends on what your experience is. Is your experience of seeing a pink rectangle, or is your experience of seeing my iPad?
Oh, it's of seeing the iPad. That happens to be a pink rectangle.
And you have distorted or creatively improved or whatever your iPad, but what you see experientially is I see the iPad. When we examine the details of that, we can see that it's a pink rectangle instead of all the rounded corners and whatever of the iPad. But my experience is of seeing the thing, which is the iPad.
Yes, against the wall. Like that wall, was a big part of it too, because it was like white, but it wasn't actually that.
And is the wall, because you'd said it, like it's against an off-white, or it's the pink iPad against an off-white. Is it that I also I see the wall, and when we examine what I'm seeing just this off-white color. Is the wall somehow present, or is it just I'm seeing the iPad against sort of a white background? The wall's that's not really part of my experience, right? Obviously, in the real world, there's the wall and stuff, right? But
yeah, it's like it's like this. Like you have a white, and then you have white, like to kind of make this kind of corner, and it's against it like that. It's angled because I'm coming at it angled, but it's like, so I guess it was not really a wall, but it is a wall.
So the question is about the wall the same as the question about the iPad. Does it seem like you're seeing in your experience, are you seeing an iPad leaning against the wall? Or am I seeing a pink rectangle leaning against the white expanse?
Oh, a white expanse. Or that is the color of the wall. Yeah.
So we answered the question the other way around for the iPad.
Mm-hmm.
The iPad was I was seeing the iPad, not a pink rectangle.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And so is my experience is I'm seeing the iPad I'm seeing an iPad leaning against the white expanse.
Yeah, because it didn't end. I think I am saying that it's the wall because it was leaning against the wall, not because in my experience it was leaning against the wall.
So the distinctions are interesting and difficult here.
Yeah.
So let's back up to the iPad again.
Okay.
Let's go through the iPad again.
Okay.
So there's the iPad of the physical world.
Mm-hmm.
And there is an iPad that Amber sees, and there is an iPad that Amber could imagine. Like I imagine you could close your eyes and form an image of the iPad. I could ask you to do that. You could probably do that.
Uh-huh.
And Cody's in my line of questioning before about the iPad was that, as I understood it, maybe I should ask again. So is at the moment of the beep, is your experience of seeing the real iPad, regardless of whether it's accurate or not, is my experience of seeing the iPad leaning against the wall, but I'm seeing the iPad?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And so that's what I took the answer to before. And so then we went on to say, well, I see the real iPad, but it's actually what I see, what I experience is not the way the iPad is. It's 4 feet instead of 2, and it's it's straight instead of leaning.
Yeah.
But my experiences of seeing the real iPad.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Now the question is about the wall. So does it seem like the real iPad is leaning against the real wall, even though just like the iPad is not seen accurately, the wall is not seen accurately? Or does it seem like the real iPad is leaning against the white expanse and I don't actually even see the wall, I just see a white expanse?
Oh. Okay. Now I understand. Okay. No, it's leaning against the wall. But it was like against, I guess, just white of the wall, not all that other stuff that I initially said. It was against just white or off-white, against the color of the wall.
So let's use the word wrong just because it's a quick word, but I don't want to have it any
Yeah.
Critical. So we see the iPad, but we see it wrong. Does that seem like a fair way to say it?
Yes. Yes.
And is it the same thing to say, well, I see the wall, but I see it wrong? It presents itself as a wall, but the details of it are wrong.
Yes, and then the position of the iPad against the wall was
also wrong.
Yeah, like it was actually here, but really I experienced it here, if that helped.
So what I've got about that is that what I see is a real scene. I see an iPad leaning against the wall.
Yes.
And all of it is wrong
Yes.
in the sense that the iPad isn't really has features that it doesn't have, and the angle has features that it doesn't have, and the wall has features that it doesn't have.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And was there anything more to that experience other than I'm seeing it?
I did mention that I understood the iPad to be upside down. But I don't know if that's important. Like that's just a detail of the seeing. It was like the orientation of it. It was upside down and backwards because I plugged the cord in and I was using the gravity to keep the cord there. That's it. Yep, that's it.
So I'm seeing my upside down iPad standing straight up against the off-white wall. Again, with the fact that in reality the real iPad is against the edge, goes past the edge of the wall, and like,
there are other colors involved in the background, and it didn't have perfectly those black dots in the corners. But yeah, I was seeing it that way in my experience for whatever reason.
I think I'm good.
And I wanted to confirm, Amber, you said the case that you were the real iPad, right, only has 2 black dots on the. Was it that case right there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It has 2 on the sides.
But I saw 4.
But I saw 4. Yeah. I think in the beginning I didn't say that, but no, that's correct.
Okay.
Yeah. That's a correct statement. Yep.
Okay. And I think, Samper, I know we're making we're getting in some pretty weird territory. Not weird in a bad way, but
yeah, that one was fun. Like that, I didn't think that one would be extremely interesting when the beep first went off, and then after I looked at it again, and I wrote everything down, I was like, okay, this one's going to be kind of interesting.
But what I would say, we are discovering that the world that you see is perceptually different from the world that is actually there.
Yeah.
And pretty often, like the previous people, I don't see the chopsticks that are that are actually there to see, and my dad is still, and he's really moving stuff.
Yeah.
And so it's not just that amber has a sort of a gloss on it. You know, the humanists would say, well, you know, everybody's got their own perception,
Mm-hmm.
but amber's perceptions are distortions of the world, or they're different from the world, for better or for worse. Right?
Yeah, because I remember I had one where I was watching TV and I had frozen the characters, right? And that was so wrong. I went back and watched the scene again. I was like, what was I looking at? That wasn't even correct. It was kind of funny. Yeah. So
Well, the only way that one can discover this is by the kind of careful cross-examination kind of question that we're engaged in
Right.
here, and that doesn't happen very often. So
Right.
I think what we're describing is probably something that happens honestly frequently, but we don't know about it because nobody asks about it.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was...
I was going to fill in. I feel like, and Dr. Robert, you can correct me on this. I feel like it comes up actually more often than you would anticipate, right? Like, I don't mean to like poo-poo you in that way, Amber, but it's like in that way, like the creative seeing is not unique to you. Like that's something that does come up more frequently than you would imagine, or is described elsewhere, right? But it's not common.
Certainly more common than described elsewhere, but I would
Right.
say it's still fairly rare.
Yeah. What I meant to say is that it's not. It comes up semi-frequently in DES, nowhere else, anywhere else, but it's not something that's hasn't been described ever before, I think.
Right. Yes.
Amber is not the Lone Ranger.
Yeah.
In this experience. Got it. Okay.
But within psychology, you're one of maybe the 10 people that we've, right? You know what I'm trying to say? Like in psychology, yeah, no one's ever really talked about this.
That's so cool. Yeah. I don't know.
Number 5.
Okay, number 5. So I had pasted a URL into a search bar.
Say that again.
Oh, I pasted a URL into the search bar on my computer. Like, I don't know. Yeah, I guess that's a search bar. And I had like pressed enter, and at the moment of the beep, I was starting to like read it for whatever reason. I don't know why I was reading it. It wasn't an intentional reading, but I was reading drive.google because it was a Google Drive link. And I was paying more attention to the word drive than anything else. But I was like unintentionally reading that whole thing. Just that portion, not the rest of it. Just drive.google.
And that's a piece of the URL. The piece of the URL is drive.google.com or whatever.
Yeah.
Okay. And when you say you're reading that, what do you mean I'm reading it?
Honestly, I'm not sure because it was an unintentional reading of it. Like, I don't know. It was like I was just looking at it. I guess I was just looking at it. Like, I put it in just to make sure that it was correct and there were no errors with it and all the stuff like that. But
Does reading it mean I'm saying it? Or does reading it mean I'm just seeing, I'm tracking across these words? Or
yeah, I'm tracking across these words.
So I'm not saying to myself or out loud, Google, drive.google, but I am somehow taking in the sense of reading, drive.google.
Yeah, I'm like examining it. But my attention is more towards the word drive for whatever reason.
And so is it the case that I am examining the word drive, or is it the case that I'm reading the word drive?
I'm reading it. I don't know. Well, I'm reading it, but I'm reading drive.google. I read that, but my attention was toward just the word drive. I don't know.
And is reading, do you mean by reading something beyond just my attention is now at drive and then it will be at that and then it will be at Google? And so my attention is salty.
Oh, I see. No, I had read drive.google, but my attention, like my focus, I guess, I don't know what a better word to use, but something like that was on Drive.
Still on Drive.
Yeah.
And they're both happening simultaneously at the moment of the beep, Amber, right? Like you're both reading drive.google and somehow also focused on Drive.
Mm-hmm.
And the reading, I'm gathering, doesn't have any perceptual characteristics. It's not like there's a voice involved. It's not like there's a highlighting involved. There's just, but somehow I have read drive.google.
Yeah, it was just weird because it was unintentional reading. Like I wasn't reading that like I'd be reading a book. I was just reading it. I don't even know how I was reading it. I just kind of was doing it.
And in this kind of reading, is it one word at a time, drive.google, or is it the whole, I'd scoop up the whole drive.google thing?
Drive.google. It's that whole little block of words and that. Yeah.
Not sequentially, not one at a time.
Not one at a time. Well, I mean, okay, sequentially though, because it was in that order, drive.google, but
On the page or on the text
in
box is in order, but that the question is whether you scoop that up as a unit all at once, drive.google, or whether you have reading is an unfolding over time, first the drive, then the dot, then the Google.
Got it. No, I just scooped that all up at one time. One block.
So I read the whole phrase, drive.google, but I'm somehow focused on the drive portion.
Yes.
And none of this is a vocal thing. I don't hear it, see it. I don't hear it, I guess.
No.
And there's no perceived reason for you to do this. You're just mindlessly reading it.
Yeah, I like where it's mindlessly just reading it for whatever reason. And I was also mindlessly focusing my attention on Drive. I'm not even sure why all that was going on.
Okay.
Well, I have a question maybe that might help. Are these words meaningful to you, Amber? Like I'm reading with comprehension, or it's sort of like I'm just, obviously in the real world, I'm reading drive.google, but I could very well have been reading gibberish and it just, I'm obviously reading it, but there's sort of no semantic understanding or meaning behind the words.
Yeah, there was no deeper meaning to it other than drive.google. It wasn't even like, the deeper meaning wasn't even that it was a URL, wasn't that it was a Google Drive link, it wasn't any of those things. It was just, just that.
And the word drive too, is that like, sort of like Nice in Beep 3, where it's just the word present, but there, like,
yes.
Or is there something more to be said about drive? Like, is there,
No, there wasn't any deeper meaning to the word drive other than that. And it wasn't, I wouldn't even say it's as clear and specific as Nice. It was just, my attention was just happened to be on that word or that portion of the group of words that I was reading.
Okay.
And I wouldn't even say visual attention, almost like mental attention. Like I was mentally attending to drive. Like I was mentally focused on it, not really even visually focused on it or anything like that.
I think I'm good.
And I'm good as well.
Okay.
I think we got one more, right? Beep 6?
Beep 6. Okay, so beep 6, I was looking at a FaceTime call. At the moment of the beep, I was looking at the FaceTime call. And as context, I was being asked to do something that I didn't really want to do. And I was, I guess, again, at the moment of the beep, I was kind of in a state of like blocking out the environment around me. I also wrote down that I was feeling similar to the frustration I described in 8.2. like this might be a better way to describe that even. But it was like, yeah, I was just looking at my phone. There were no real details to that. And then I was like blocking out the world, I guess. Yeah.
So is there sort of three things going on? I'm looking at my phone. I'm kind of in this, I'm blocking things out and I'm frustrated.
Yeah.
All equally present?
Yes.
Okay.
Before we go down any further roads, can I ask, as I'm looking at my phone and blocking out the rest of the world, is this just a figure ground thing? I'm looking at my phone and I'm just not attending to whatever else is there? Or does it seem like I'm actively blocking out the rest of the world?
Felt like I was actively blocking out everything else going on.
You do feel that?
Yeah. Because my attention was being diverted from all these other things to like this idea of like annoyance, I guess, like that frustration feeling, like now I gotta deal with this.
And so for context, right, Amber, you referenced 8.2, and that was the carrying the stuff down the hallway.
Yes.
Okay. And so when you say this is similar.
So let's not go there. Let's start with how this was, and then later we can get to whether it's similar or not.
Okay.
So what was present to you in this beat?
Okay, so it was almost like, so I felt like I was kind of like closing off the outside environment almost to other things. I can't even be specific about what I was closing the world off to. I was just kind of doing it. And then this feeling was coming up while I was looking at my phone. While my eyes were looking at my phone, and I was seeing kind of not distinctly what was happening on there, but it was like, yeah.
And I see you like pointing. Is this like a physical kind of a thing, like a physical sensation, or is this something else?
It's more mental. It's definitely mental. But physical, or like physically even in the mental world, not really. This one, not really, no.
So this is like a mental or more mental blocking.
Yes.
And by blocking, is that I can imagine that might be like I'm just focusing my attention on one thing and not other things, or I'm actively kind of like, I'm actively pushing away these things coming up. I mean, that can show up a lot of different ways.
Yes. I would say I was getting my focus and kind of almost like just trying to close off everything else so I could keep my focus on this one thing going on here. It's one kind of chaotic thing going on here.
I'm sort of mentally zeroing in on is it that specific? I'm zeroing in on something, or I'm just trying to mentally block these other things that are coming up.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, no, it wasn't even specific like that. It was just, I'm just blocking out distractions, and it wasn't even like anything was distracting me. It was just like a vague, like I'm closing off distractions.
So I'm understanding you to be saying this is not just a zooming in. This is blocking out.
Yes.
Experientially blocking out.
Yes.
Okay.
If I had to metaphorically describe it, I would almost describe it like if experience was all in color, it'd be everything is black, like just dark, and then you have this one thing that is lit up. But that's super metaphorical, and I was just, yeah, I don't know if that helps.
So let me stick with your metaphor. So is it just that there's one thing that's clear and everything else is black? Or is it that I'm trying to make this thing clear, and in doing that, I have to create the blackness. I have to block everything out so that it stays black. I feel myself blocking it out.
Yes, yep, that second point there. Yep.
So it's not just naturally that those things get blocked out because I'm focusing in on this interesting thing. It's that I have to erase everything else so that this thing can be interesting.
Yes, so that this thing can be, instead of maybe like a little, again, metaphorically, like a little piece of color, it can be a whole thing.
Okay.
That's super metaphorical. That wasn't really in the experience, but that's how I would describe that.
So I understand that, but so let's make sure we get the metaphor out. So without the metaphor, what we're saying is that I have, in my experience at this moment, I am somehow actively blocking out the stuff that is not of primary interest to me, as opposed to just zooming in on what is primary interesting to me.
Yes.
Okay.
And I also heard you be saying, Amber, that thing of interest isn't really specified at this moment. It's more so is that correct?
Yeah.
It's more so that I'm actively blocking out
Other indiscriminate things, yes.
Okay. And is all of that what we had previously called the frustration, the 8.2 stuff, or?
I guess in hindsight, that it is a little bit different than that.
I mostly don't care about the 8.2 stuff. What I'm just trying to get a feel, though, is that of what was in your experience at this moment.
No, the physicalness of 8.2 was not there. No.
Okay.
It was more the blocking out. And I was looking at the phone still.
Yeah. And so what do you see?
Phone. Just an indiscriminate person, I guess. An indiscriminate picture on the phone.
And the whole phone? Like, I'm not just seeing the person on the screen. I'm seeing the borders of my phone and...
Yep. But nothing else. Like, not my hand, not the background.
Okay.
Yeah.
And there was a portion of this where you said that you were being asked to do something that you didn't want to do.
Yeah.
Is that context, or is that part of your experience?
That's context. That's kind of what brought on this whole situation in the first place. Yeah.
So at the moment of this beep, my experience is I am mildly seeing, but not very differentiatedly, my phone. And I am more involved in excluding anything else that might compete with this.
Yeah, yes. And I mean, that the experience, yes, is indiscriminate, but the reason, can I say the reason, or is that not relevant?
As long as we keep it separate, it's all right.
Okay, yeah, okay. So the reason is like, okay, so I was being asked to do something that I didn't want to do that was like an inconvenience at the time because I was sampling. So I was like, I need to finish sampling. So but at that point I was kind of like, oh, whatever. So I was walking to go and do what I had to do, and then I was like, nope, I'm going to be sampling. So I turned around, I was going back, and I was starting to block everything out, and then the beep went off. And afterwards, in retrospect, it was kind of like, oh, how ironic. I didn't want to go and get distracted so that I could finish sampling and sample accurately, not be distracted. And then it went off, like, after I had made all those decisions. I don't know if that helped anything, but that's that's kind of what happened.
So at the moment of this beep, there are two things. I see my phone, and I'm blocking out the rest of the stuff.
Yeah, blocking out all that chaos that I described. Yeah, I'm beginning to do it. Or I'm in the process of doing it. I don't even want to say I was beginning to do it. It's in the process.
Does it seem like more of my perceptual interest or whatever is on the blocking out than on the phone?
Yes.
And by more, do we mean 5149 or 99.1?
Oh, my goodness. Yeah, I'm not even too sure. I guess 90-10?
So a lot more.
Yes, a lot more.
A lot more on the blocking out than on the seeing.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think I'm good.
And is your sense of what you know about amber? Now this is just an aside, basically, but if the beep had come a little bit later, you would have blocked that out, and then we would have gotten a beep that would have been about you and the phone.
Oh. But yeah, if I take a guess, I would think that it would have been more, I think that it may have been more of like a, I was right kind of a feeling, because the reason I was starting to block everything out was because I was getting irritated that I was like getting irritated because I knew that if I had gone to do what I was going to do, I would have totally screwed up this beep. Totally screwed it up, because I would have been walking, or I would have been doing something, and I would have had the beeper, and I would have had a notebook, and then I would have had to stop in the middle of what I was doing to try and write things down. So if we had caught me later, it would have been kind of like a vindication, because I had made the executive decision myself to say, nope, that is going to wait. I'm going to finish sampling so I can accurately get something here. And then, yeah, like maybe 2 steps. I turned around and made 2 steps, and then it went off. So I was not in the process of being like, I knew it. I don't know if that's relevant.
So you used a word in there, which I can't remember what it was, but there were, I've lost my train of thought.
Okay.
Oh, well. Then I think I'm good.
Yep.
And we're going to do this again?
Sure.
So
I have a question, just overall. So, you had mentioned before that we were gonna like stop soon. I was like, who makes that decision? Just wondering.
We make that decision.
Oh, all of us?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm gonna be biased. That's why.
And I would say we make it, but you have 51% of the vote.
Oh.
So if you were to say I don't want to do this anymore, then we would not do it anymore. If you were to say, well, I want to do it anymore, then what? Well, I guess what I should say is you have 51% of the voters saying when we want to discontinue. If you say I want to continue, then we would have to agree with it that we all have time to do it, whatever.
Okay. I was just wondering, because I was like thinking the other day, I was like, I can't even imagine not wanting to continue. Because every time I'm bringing something different, I'm like, I really want to figure out what was going on. Or like, you know.
It's all interesting. It's all interesting.
Yeah.
yeah, especially, I mean, not that it, especially after I think today's beeps, not that today's beeps were any, I think, extraordinary than the others, but I think the patterns that we've been noticing over the past few times, at least I'm curious to give it one more day to see what we might find.
Yeah, because I feel like there were like things that I've said in the past that weren't, that had just for whatever reason of the universe, they just haven't been revisited yet. So I was wondering if that is, you know, we haven't catch
Well, I would
something.
say let's do it another time or two, and then we can determine what we're going to do with it from there.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. I was,
If you get too many days, then you get overwhelmed. So
yeah.
so there's diminishing returns and whatever.
Right.